Welcome to the After Hours Clinic with Dr. David Janarious and Better Life co-founder Andrew Lane, where we unpack the science of health and wellness, cut through the noise, and add a healthy dose of humor.
Dr. Dave, welcome back.
It's good to be back, man. I'm nervous, man, because I feel like I'm out of practice, having been out of my house for the past couple weeks. If anyone who isn't my mom is wondering, where's Dr. Dave's podcasts and recordings? I didn't forget about them. It's just I've been living in a series of hotels and Airbnbs of varying quality.
Understood. Well, we're glad to have you back. I can see we maybe have a little work to do in resetting up your microphone and webcam and stuff, but it's good to see you today. Your haircut makes you look like the spitting image of Jude right now.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking fresh to death with this haircut. I actually, right next to my gym, there's like this man cave, like haircut place. I think it's a chain. It's called Hammer and Nails. And one of our patients actually goes there like every week. And This patient is an absolute dime piece. Like, being completely heterosexual, I can't help it. He's an Adonis, man, and his hair is always perfect. And I was like, he told me that he goes there every week, which I didn't even know that was a thing that guys did. I get a haircut like once a year. And so, I went there, and it's like, because I usually either like just shave my head on the porch, or I go to like Great Clips and tell them to shave my head. So this is like my first experience in a proper like barber shop, and it is like what you think it would be. It's like you walk in, and the first thing you see is a bar. They serve like cocktails, and then there's like a whole separate back room of like this is like their like flagship product is like a man cave area where they do your nails and stuff.
Oh, and okay.
She's like, are you interested in a manicure and pedicure? And I was like, I did not know that was an option. I've never.
I did not come prepared to discuss these questions.
I'm like a cat. Like, I had to know you well if you're going to touch my paws. Like,
yeah.
So I did not elect for the mani-pedi, but I did get a cool haircut. And it was funny. The second I came home, my son was like, "Oh, I want your haircut." And so I actually took him to the same place just yesterday and got him basically.
Oh, I wish we could see the two of you. I later you got to send me a picture of the two of you side by side, because I thought for sure his haircut was already pretty close to yours. But
it's even closer.
Let me see if I can get this like it's like a bit of a mushroom top. But
this is just how I woke up, actually. So I'm supposed to put a styling product in it and comb it, but I don't comb because I've never used one, obviously. And I'm not used to putting styling product in my hair is much like putting sunscreen. I didn't grow up doing it, and it feels weird to start.
Yeah.
So
but, that's fair.
I actually did get up with my kid, and I had styled his hair for him as best I could.
Dude, I bet he's feeling like $1 million at school today.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know if it's just that he wanted to go to an adult barber shop, or if he really thought my haircut was that cool. But, they always say the sincerest form of flattery is mimicry, right? Or something like that.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess mimicry sounds like they could be mocking you, but
no, it's true, right? I mean, it's you could tell the difference between whether he really likes it or not. That's awesome, man. I mean, that's everyone's dream, is to have their 11-year-old son actually want to be like them. So just keep it up another 10 years, and you'll be living the unachievable dream of the rest of us.
Well, I think it's also every parent's fear in some way that their kids are going to grow up to be just like them, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It's this two-edged sword.
Yeah, so we'll see how it works. But
speaking of parenting, so you've been out of your house for a couple of weeks, and on the road, and we went on a ski trip, our famed yearly ski trip. And I nudged us to read this book on parenting because I got the impression it would probably just speak to both of us about how wrong everything we're doing is, or how much room for, how much room there for improvement there is in the confines of imaginary, pages of this book. So I'm curious to, hear more about your settling back in your own house, hopefully. Although I understand construction's still kind of underway a little bit, which I know a thing or two. I know a thing. I don't know if you recall. I've been living in construction for a year and a half as well. Like it's pretty. It feels like we get a month off, and then all of a sudden it feels like it's back at it. But yeah, I mean, in whatever order makes sense. Like fill us in. Like how are you feeling?
Actually, I'm feeling really good, and I actually credit it a lot to. Partially to the book we read, but partially just to the act of reading. Now, to give our listeners a little background, part of, I think, how our friendship kind of deepened was, back in California when we lived, not too far from each other, we had a book club we'd meet up at every month. I know everyone else listened to the audiobook version, but I was very fastidious about reading all of these books. And so as a result, I would read like 2-3 books a month. And can I tell you that period of time is one of these sort of nostalgic period of time where you think of everything as being perfect? Because I will say, I was happier in that moment than I think I'd been in my adult life to recollect. And once I moved to Florida with everything with the pandemic, and then which is what everyone blames it on.
So let's be clear. You moved to Florida, and then you started a pandemic. That's how I understood it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I probably brought it from California.
Yeah.
But once we're here, my focus really shifted a lot to reading a lot of medical literature. So as people could probably tell, I do that every day, but that's to the exclusion of just reading for pleasure. Mm-hmm. And this book that you had picked was sort of my first foray back into reading for pleasure. So just in and of itself just the act of reading has had a huge impact on my mental health, like shockingly. But I think without further ado, maybe if you want to introduce the book.
Yeah. So the book, I want to give it its proper due. It's called Dopamine Kids. It's by Michaeleen Doucleff. She's the author of Hunt, Gather, Parent. And, her previous book, Hunt, Gather, Parent, had been formative for my wife and I. I got to give credit to my wife. She's constantly seeking out these parenting books. And some of them are better than others, but I think the real value for us has been in A, doing the reading, like you're saying, and B, just forcing us to think about ideas. Sometimes they're not ideas we always want to adopt and take into our house, but sometimes they are, and they always just get us thinking and more intentional about our parenting. And I don't know, I'm really grateful for it. I grew up in a house that did not seek parenting advice from outside. My mom got all of her parenting advice, in dictate and mandates from her parents and from the church, and then just ran with it. And it was like a calcified stone by the time I was on the scene. So it feels like I'm creating a more dynamic environment for my kids, and I hope it's one that they'll benefit from.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I was laughing earlier because you brought up the importance of ideas. And I remember I said the most basic bitch thing to my wife the other day. I was like, what's so profound about reading is that it gives you ideas. And the second those words left my mouth and how odd this sounded, I wanted to punch myself. That's the lamest thing you could say, but it is true. And I do think it's funny that you point out this notion of sort of static parenting, because I think that is like my parents to a T. My parents are the same people they were in 1980. Their positions or thoughts of things have not changed. I've never heard one of them say I was wrong or I made a mistake. If they did something bad, there was never been an apology. Shit, my dad's never even said I love you. They're those kind of stoic, patient parents.
Yeah.
But I will say, I actually, as an adult, appreciate their consistency. There is something, even when it's not perfect, there's the idea of precision and accuracy. Accuracy means you hit the bullseye, precision means you don't necessarily hit the bullseye, but you hit the same point on the target.
Mhm.
They weren't always accurate in their perception of parenting, but man, were they consistent.
Yeah.
Which I think does a lot for a child in creating a sense of security and,
for sure.
and all that.
Yeah.
But they sure as fuck would not have read Dopamine Kids.
It's so I'll read, just for anyone who's listening only, the little blurb about the book is Dopamine Kids. Parenting advice around screens is woefully outdated. It hinges on psychology and neuroscience from 25 to 50 years ago. It doesn't work and often makes our lives harder. Dopamine Kids offers you an easy and more effective approach. In her 5-step protocol, you'll learn how to retrain your child's brain so they seek out activities and foods that bring gratification and true joy. The healthy option becomes the default option in your home. These are big promises. I have to be honest and say, I haven't found that I haven't found that the 5-step protocol from her book is absolutely changing our house. But I think it's got a lot of great ideas in there. I think it's challenges a lot of thought, and it also helps. I think there's some parts of it that are just, you just read and you're like, well, duh. Everyone knows that screens are bad. Okay. Mr. Mackey would say screens are bad. Yeah. But she does seem to offer some practical advice. And I think I really appreciated some of the perspective shifts that she offered.
I'll start with one perspective shift that I kind of had, that I found interesting in her book. And it was, it's in the title, dopamine. What is dopamine? Dopamine is now a pop culture word, just like serotonin has become a pop culture word. And everyone talks about dopamine as the pleasure hormone. That's kind of what we're taught in med school too. But I think she brings up a very interesting distinction here that I think is worth touching on. See, what we're kind of taught is, if we, eat a bag of corn nuts, which my favorite snack, or a line of cocaine, not my favorite drug. I don't do that. But the idea is it stimulates dopamine, which sends us into a world of bliss. And her argument is, and she kind of uses some basic science and mice and things like that to kind of back it up, which is the dopamine is not necessarily there to give you pleasure. The dopamine is there to give you the motivation to do an activity. And a lot of the kind of addictions of the modern age, cell phones being the big one she harps on, is a chase for dopamine, meaning it motivates us to keep looking at short form videos. But what it doesn't do is provide the hormones that are more responsible for sustained long-term contentment. So it's giving you the urge, the motivation to keep scrolling, but the scrolling doesn't lead to those shifts in serotonin, which is largely considered the sort of long-term sustaining happiness hormone, if you want to kind of condense it down a little. And so I found that kind of interesting that we're chasing the dragon, but not getting the reward. And I think she's spot on when it comes to screen time. And she actually points out a statistic that I found really interesting, which is the average American records something like 8 hours of screen time a day, which is crazy. That's a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think those numbers are kind of inflated just because certain things are counted as screen time that aren't actually screen time. But like, for example, if you look at your text messages and you leave your text message thing open, it's recording the whole time.
Sure. I mean, most people's screens are automatically turning off after a minute or two of inactivity. But you're right. Yeah, that or getting directions to someplace and back. It's going to count all of that as screen time while you're driving.
Or if you listen to a podcast on Spotify, some of those have videos that are playing in the background. So that's something I'll frequently do is I'll listen to the breaking points with the Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty just for background noise when I go for my long bike rides, which will be 2 hours. And that's like counting it as screen time, which is
sure.
But suffice to say, I mean, even if it was, 2/3 of that, that's a lot, and To be honest, I've been guilty of allowing my kids far too much screen time, because, my wife and I use the sort of justification that, hey, man, we both grew up on screens and junk food. Like, my mom, my wife, rather, apparently her mom fed her like cake in the morning and the TV was always on. I was a latchkey kid, so there was like no one home when I came home. So sometimes that would be me going out and hanging out with friends. Sometimes that would be me drinking a 6-pack of Coke and like eating a sleeve of Oreos while I watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, we're kind of like, oh, well, we were a bit laissez-faire. And, a couple things. One, obviously screens aren't what they used to be, right? Because the immediate ability to scroll to new things, download new things, go to new episodes that didn't exist.
Yeah.
It's obviously a different world out there. And to be honest, it is something where I would see a correlation that like, hey, if on the weekends we're really lax about screens, Monday morning when they have to go back to school is just pure hell. So I think that what she's on to about the screen times, I can't argue, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure
you've said it before. I think you had a phrasing for it that really resonated with me. I think you basically said, like, it's clear for us to see that like the more time they spend on screens, the like less self-regulated they become.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that seems to be true. I saw my neighbor over the weekend and she said something to the effect of like, I don't know how your kids handle being at home, but my kids go crazy being at home, being inside, cooped up inside at home. And I said, well, my kids, they get a little wily. Like we need to send them outside sometimes, even without something planned. I said, but they're okay. Like they're really enjoying playing chess right now, or whatever, or playing their ukulele. And she's like, well, gosh, yeah, like mine definitely need outdoor time. Like I try to get them just to like watch a movie, and they can't even like sit still for 2 hours to watch a movie. And I'm like, that's the problem. I'm like, if I give my kids like 30 minutes of screen time on a Saturday morning, they will be. They'll be these antsy, demanding little tyrants for hours to come. Like, it may not be the case 100% of the time, but it feels like it's almost always true that like anytime we think like, oh, just turn on an episode of Bluey or turn on an episode of it, like just give them what they want. Just give them a little bit of screen time. Like it almost always bites my wife and I in the ass. Like it almost never results in like peace and quiet in our house. Like it's just not the case. We're kicking the can down the road and making the problem bigger. Anytime we do that with our own kids.
And can I say for the listeners, like you and Megan had these strategies kind of already implemented in many ways, like in a way that, like, to be honest, as much as I look forward to our yearly ski trip, part of me is like, oh, I'm going to feel bad when I see how on top of it they are as parents, because like, what is the first thing that I do after getting off the mountain? I'm like, let's go to Rocket Fizz and buy like 20 packs of gummy bears. I'm like, hey, Andrew, kids want some gummy bears? Like it's like I'm offering them cocaine, and you're like, no, dude. Like, family trip. Get that shit out of here.
Oh man, you do have a sweet tooth. Your sweet tooth has become legend at this point. Yeah.
I mean, I just love gummy candies. It's something that, especially because I don't drink anymore. It's something that I enjoy, and it's something that, like, me personally, like, I don't go crazy. Like I eat I eat the serving size you're supposed to eat, and I'm done.
You open the package divided by 7, and then have one of those 1 7.
I don't have an eating disorder. I just grab a handful and call that a serving. Like for me, that. Like, one of my good habits is I work out every day. So
that's an incredible self-driven quality that you have. Like, I don't know where that comes from. I don't know how I don't know how your parents instilled that in you, or if this is just a genetic thing, but like it'd be fascinating to trace your own history back, because
I can actually tell you where it comes from. And this is where, because one of the big things she talks about, not just screens, but she talks a lot about removing processed foods, replacing them for whole foods, which is obviously a no doubt moment.
Mhm.
But I will tell you, that was not my childhood. I again, as Coca-Colas, Oreos, Pop-Tarts. I was actually a really chubby kid. I'll get photos because it's hard to imagine, but I was really heavy. And as a result, at some point I started playing sports. I needed to cut some weight and get in better shape. I wrestled in high school, so I had to make weight. And as a result, I learned like how to read nutrition labels, and I learned how to portion, because every year for wrestling season I'd have to lose 25 pounds, and because it just, I would gain 20 over the summer, and then in the winter I would have to get down to 152 pounds.
Wow.
And so I'd go from like 175 to, and I would do it just,
that's a lot of bulking and cutting and bulking and cutting. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's also a lot easier when you're 16, right?
Sure.
But as a result, that skill is very much inherent to me, such that like I don't need to use a calorie tracker app or some macro. I know exactly like how to parse food. And so for me, like right now, as you know, I'm on a goal to get, like, I'm on a mission to get like 6-pack abs like I had when I was like, in college and high school. And so I'm kind of going through that process. And to be honest, it's I don't want to make it sound like it's easy. It is a little bit of work, but it's not hard work because it's just something I've done forever. And so in there, I was kind of like, well, I can kind of see the value of like learning how to self-regulate from an early age.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that just applied to food. Like I used to be, half a pack to a pack a day smoker when I was in high school and college. And I just quit one day like it was nothing. I don't even remember it being hard. Quitting alcohol was definitely a little bit tougher. But I mean, you've been with me for the past year. And it hasn't been, I don't need a sponsor. I don't need to talk about it. I just don't drink. And, that's, for those who don't know, I wasn't like a fall down drunk. I was, I have a condition that predisposes me to dementia. And that was why I chose to quit drinking. But, I think I did kind of exercise that muscle of self-regulation from an early age. And I think it has served me well, which is why I was not as gung-ho on her, like, remove all processed foods from your house kind of take. But I know you felt very differently about it. And I think you also said some things that kind of stuck with me. Because I remember we were sitting, waiting for our food at that Mexican restaurant, and we were kind of arguing about the virtues of eliminating processed foods. And you said something like, "Hey, man, I've struggled with my weight my whole life."
Yeah.
And personally, I haven't. Like I did when I was a kid, but then as an adult, not really, And what you're describing is what like 75% of Americans are describing, right?
Yeah.
75% of adults. So clearly this is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
and to be clear, let's describe that for a second. I mean, it's, again, I'll give credit to the author for broaching the subject. And at times I think she gets a little preachy about a lot of these things. And some of her recommendations are loftier than I think I'm going to be able to reach for personally. But, I think she just clearly lays out this case that factory food has dominated our existence, and we make decisions now that are completely, they've changed the decision space that we have to, a lot of times what we're considering is choices between processed and factory food items. And we're trying to figure out like which is the healthier of the factory food items, instead of having a conversation about whether we should eat a whole food or a manufactured food. And it's
absolutely,
it's just completely changed the landscape to the point where I mean, the vast majority of my calories for the last 30 years have come from some sort of manufactured factory food that is very calorie dense often. And when it's not calorie dense, it's full of chemicals that are intended to simulate, the sweetness that I crave, or the saltiness that I crave, or the fat that I crave. And they don't leave me like feeling satisfied. They leave me craving for more. And so I want a bigger bag of those Doritos, or a larger sandwich, or a bigger Coke, a family pack of everything. And it's great. I mean, I've become the perfect American. I buy way more food and beverage than I need. I drink more and eat more at more times of the day than ever before. I'm stimulating the economy. I'm creating jobs, and I gotta buy new clothes every year because I never fit in anything for very long. And now I'm on weight loss drugs to get it all in check.
And doing beautifully.
Yeah, but I think that's actually part of where our initial, like, to go back to that conversation, it's like, that's why I felt more convinced of her point that like these factory ultra processed foods were really pretty sinister, because I've experienced that for 30 years.
Can I ask a quick question? Like, growing up, did your mom and stepdad, did they eat more whole foods or more like processed foods?
No, more processed foods. Yeah. Okay. More processed foods. And I think there's my understanding is that the screens and the foods together, I was a little dubious about her pairing these two topics in the same book, but it does seem like they have a similar evolution and growth trajectory where, like, there have been TV screens and video games in our life for a long time. There have been processed foods in our life for a long time, but the common thread is that over the last 30 to 40 years, they've been insidious at getting more refined and more refined and more ubiquitous to the point that we spend 8 hours a day on our screens, and the vast majority of our food stuffs are these manufactured things. And so your question about like, what did we eat in my house growing up? Like, there was probably more whole foods when I was 10 years old than there were when I was, 16 years old. But even when I was 10, like, my grandmother was making rice-a-roni and hamburger helper, and slowly but surely, like, convenience foods have become the thing that fills the meals in my life.
It's funny. And so my counter argument to what you were saying was this. I am, and I still believe this, I'd firmly believe kids will grow up to mimic their parents, just like their haircuts, right?
Yeah.
So like, I make a lot of joke about eating gummy bears and curl nuts, and I do. But if you actually look at the vast majority of my diet, probably a third of it is like fresh fruit. And then like, dinner will usually be some kind of protein with a carb, like rice or something like that. So most of my diet is actually whole foods. Mm-hmm. It's just that I like to, sprinkle in the joy. But like, and that's exactly how my parents eat. Like, I just grew up to kind of be my parents. And my thought was like, let my kids enjoy now, because who's candy for? And they will eventually just do what I do. And I also have kind of a secondary thought on a secondary bias, which is this. If you look at my parents, if you ever look at a picture of me standing next to them, I look like I'm a fucking science experiment. Like, I am massive compared to them. And, that of course is obviously not genetic. They're both like 5'3". Part of it probably is from that excess nutrition I got. So like, if you look at my brother was not a chubby kid. And when he was a senior in high school, he was like 5'3", 5'4", 120 pounds. I was almost 6 foot and like $170. The size difference is noticeable, and I don't think it's just like I got these genes that made me huge. And it's fun.
Did you drink a lot of milk? Was it growth hormones in the milk?
No, I ate a lot of cookies, and I think at one point in the '90s they got like this low fat kick, and Snackwells came out.
Yeah.
And like as a kid, I'm like, oh, these are low fat. I'm gonna be ripped, But it's funny because my brother ate like a bird until he went to college and got all the processed junk you get in the mess hall. And all of a sudden, like in college, he hit his growth spurt. And like now he's only an inch shorter than me. We're the same exact weight. We're, basically the same build. I'm slightly bigger, but not significantly. And it's funny that this sort of trashy American diet is what seemed to make both of us grow. So I have this sort of, kind of bias and maybe allegiance to our processed diets.
Yeah. I mean, it's a small sample size, but it's a major effect that you're having borne witness to, right? Like that's, if I could associate processed foods with growing an extra 5 inches, I'd definitely think twice. I read this book years ago called Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us. Great book. Like I can't speak highly enough about it. I mean, I think to this day, it still deserves credit for how convinced I am that this is just absolute garbage that they're selling us. Every year the average American eats 33 pounds of cheese, 70 pounds of sugar. They ingest 8,500 milligrams of salt a day, double the recommended amount. None of it comes from salt shakers. It comes from processed food, an industry that hauls in $1 trillion in annual sales. Investigative reporter Mike Moss shows how this happened, featuring examples from some of the most recognizable and profitable companies. I mean, he basically just says like, every time there was a health trend around salt, sugar, or fat, these companies just responded by re-engineering their formulas to be able to put on the label whatever they wanted to put on the label, whether it's like fortified cereals with all these vitamins and minerals, or low fat this or low sugar that.
Snackwell. Are you old enough to remember Snackwells? Or
I don't know.
This was early 90s. It came in a green packaging. They would sell like devil food cookies that basically had like 1 gram of fat, but like 1 billion grams of sugars. That's it. Yeah.
So I did not eat these, but I ate lots of other crap that was basically the same Nabisco, and like I ate lean cuisine, which is just like it's an entire dinner, based on the same principles, and that's largely what he's describing, right, in his book, and is that they're not selling you food; they're selling you a science experiment, and the science experiment is manipulated to target what you think of as good food, to have the attributes you think of as good food, but also to maximize their profitability and to maximize your desire to buy it back again. And I think that's the tie-in back to Dopamine Kids. It's like, you're 45, I'm pushing 40, we're pushing 45 and 40. We're in this world of, the science of profitability maximization and attention grabbing, behavior modification is just so advanced that it's in everything now. It's in the screens and it's in the food, and everything is engineered like a slot machine to get you to do it again, to get you to spend a little more time, to get you to engage with the advertisements, to get you to buy another bag of Snackwell cookies or Butterfinger ice cream bars or whatever it might be. And there was this passage early in the book, and this just stood out to me so much. She said, like, for the first time in her life, she wondered, like, who would she be? How would she spend her time if it wasn't in service to the screen that had been engineered to capture so much of her time? What food decisions, what would her family eat if it wasn't the products that these major food corporations had engineered her to want? Yep. And that this became a question that was like both freeing and heavy at the same time. Like how do I answer this question when because all I know is everything that's been pushed on me. It made me really want to put my phone on Do Not Disturb more. It made me really want to put my phone away more. It made me really want to do the hard thing of not microwaving dinner or ordering takeout, and instead like eating something that was made from scratch, even if it meant that I didn't have 4 things in my little plate that maybe I had 1 or 2, but like they were real things. I mean, Megan and I have talked about like, cheese and crackers would probably be more healthy than the takeout food we're getting, several times a week.
Yeah, I mean, and she puts it, one of her contentions in this book, and it's an important one, is that when you take a sort of what she calls a dopamine magnet, like a screen or processed food, the idea is you have to replace it with something, right?
Yeah.
And I actually did wholeheartedly jump on that.
Yeah, that's what I'm most curious to learn about. Is like, what's your experience been like now that you've been trying to do something here?
So for me, I was not so much worried for myself about the processed food because, again, that's something that I don't have trouble contrling at all.
Yeah, I mean, for as long as I've known you, you've cooked. You're a person who cooks food. I mean, you used to invite us over for dinner, and I would be shocked that you'd have like 8 pans dirty. Your kitchen would be an absolute shit show. Just like a bomb went off in your kitchen, but you'd have this like gourmet spread of homemade food.
That's because 4 of the dishes were gourmet, the other 8 probably.
But they were real foods, right? Like I was just amazed they were real foods. Like you'd come over to my house for dinner and I'd order like Pat and Oscar's pizza and breadsticks or something, like. So you're saying, the food didn't resonate as hardly with you.
My thing, because obviously for me, I'm older. Even if I watch screens too much, I can work around it because I'm so used to not having screens, right? Where the rubber meets the road is for my kids, because I think it's an absolute danger. And, my thought before even switching out their dopamine magnet for something more sustainable, the first thing that you have to do as a parent is you have to model the behavior. I think that is one thing that I don't think she emphasized enough, which is kids will do what you do and they'll do your bad habits first. So the first thing I did is I simply replaced when I would look at my screen with reading a book. So in the past, literally in the past 3 weeks, I'm now on my 3rd book, and so my screen time dropped in half. I think yesterday I had a total of 2 hours and 30 minutes of screen time total.
Wow.
It was one of those things where, and immediately I noticed the benefit. And it made it easy for me to tell my kids, hey, we're just not looking at screens. If you want, I took them to Barnes and Noble's, got them books. You can sit there and read. And it's funny because for example, my youngest, who is probably the most prone to screens, he loves them. He has autism, so some of them are very soothing to him. But where on Saturday morning he would normally take his iPad and eat his processed cereal, instead he's sitting there with a children's book, just looking at it while he eats.
That's great, man.
Just little things yesterday morning he was asking, "Oh, can I look at my iPad?" I said, "No, but do you want to go get some donuts?" And he's like, "Yeah, I love donuts." I was like, "All right, get your bike. We're going to go bike to the donut shop."
Nice.
I took him on a little 8-mile, 4 miles one way back.
Really?
Yeah.
Ben.
Oh no,
Ben can do 4 miles in each direction. Wow, that's awesome, man.
He's gone 15.
Wow. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
My son and I did 4.5 miles in one direction. That's the longest we've done. We didn't do that both ways. We met my wife at the farmer's market, almost 5 miles from our house.
Oh gosh. So Ben is super motivated by cake pops and donuts. So it doesn't matter how far that is, he will go. And then the key is, it's funny. The funny thing is going there is what I imagine it would be like trying to gain territory in World War I, right? It'd be slowly, it's very slow. But once you pick up the cake pop or the donut and tell him that he has to eat it at home, that ride back home he's
hauling ass home.
Yes, so, but and so or with Jude, I'll make him go out in the yard and I'll give him a cool task. Like, hey, here's a machete, chop this thing down.
Yeah.
Something that like, oh, it's a knife. Hell yeah. It looks badass to be wielding machete.
Yeah. If only he was allowed to use dynamite to clear landscaping, that'd be even more fun, right?
So as much as I mean, you heard me, I kind of shit all over the author when we were talking about it, just because of her pretentious tone that just smacks so hard of San Francisco. I remember 20 pages in, I looked at my wife and I go, I guarantee you without looking this author up, she's from San Francisco. I know it. and 100 page later, boom, I was right.
Yeah.
But just because someone's obnoxious and preachy, and to be quite honest, it almost feels like she's bragging the entire time. It doesn't make it not true.
Yeah.
Right. And I will say, like, in my own life, I'm definitely happier. I feel a lot more levity. I make a lot more jokes. I'm out doing a lot more things, like to the point of what would we be doing if we weren't captured? I'm out just like doing random things in the yard or whatever.
Yeah. And your kids are reading books, right? I mean, which they were perfectly capable of reading before, but it's like, it's going to create new experiences that wouldn't have happened as often or at all had they been on their iPad.
Exactly. And I temper it. I'm not like, in the book, she talks about how like they removed all bad food. No, I don't do that. But what I started doing is since we returned, I've cooked every single night. Whereas, sometimes I would get lazy and do a prepackaged thing that you just heat up or, order out. I have not done that once since we've gotten back. And I think personally, a couple of things I noticed. One, it gives me a sense of pride that I'm doing something good for my kids. It has broadened my youngest child's diet because he really struggles with new foods.
And he's already eating new, like in this week or so, 2 weeks since you've read the book, he's already eating more than he was before.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Wow.
And for me, and this is a big one for the adults, I've lost like 5 pounds since our trip. Like
what?
Yeah. Because
how did you manage that?
Because when you cook every day, there's studies that show this, like you consume like 300 less calories. There's something about the process of cooking yourself that makes you way less hungry. I don't know what it is, but it works like magic.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to, make people shy away from the book by talking about how obnoxious her tone is. The actual core arguments, I think, have a lot of merit. And you don't necessarily need to take them to extremes, but implementing them in small ways is obviously a net win.
Yeah, I think maybe we could agree on that. Like there's a degree to which, it's hard to hear how successful she is or all of her wins. It can feel braggy or obnoxious at times, but it does seem like all of her strategies, if you implement them to any degree that you implement them, you're going to be grateful, because some of them are no shit strategies that you just needed a reminder to do, and other of them are reasonable ideas. And I'm really like, it seems silly, like a silly suggestion, but like early on, she talks about my daughter wanted cookies at the grocery store, and I said, we can't buy those cookies, but we'll buy the ingredients. If you want to make cookies, you can have cookies. And I think that speaks that's literally the point you're saying. It's like when you make it, you don't eat all of it right away.
She mentions that her daughter, after making them, only ate a couple and was good.
Right, instead of the whole package, which I do with the the Chips Ahoy Chewies. I love my Chips Ahoy Chewies.
Yeah. You got the serotonin. You got the serotonin from this feeling of accomplishment, right? Mm-hmm. And that, if you ever notice, like, if you remember, like the last, like, really big, like, kind of win you got in life, whether it was like you got recognized for an award or you made a huge deal in your business that really blew things up. In that moment when you got the good news and you were on cloud nine, I'm guessing food was not necessarily on your mind.
That's fair.
Moment, right?
That's fair. That's true. Yeah.
And so I think that's what she's kind of cultivating, is that sort of, if you get that sort of deep satisfaction hormone in your life, it reduces the urge for dopamine hits, which I think 100% agree. Now, I will say the one thing that drove me crazy about her book is she has one child, developmentally typical, that she's able to devote tons of time and money and privilege on. And, the way she would describe her daughter was just obnoxious. Like, oh, like she only eats organic food. She started her own business. Like, stop that, and it actually is going to be a perfect segue into the next book that I sent you on narcissism, because I do think her parenting style veers a little into the parenting style that Jonathan Haidt was warning us against. The helicopter parent, the make all your kids' decisions for them, the feeling that they're the special princess in the center of the world, which leads to kind of issues later on dealing with the real world when they're not that person, right? When they are surrounded by the cold, cruel world that does not care about them. And the next book that, just as a precursor that I kind of recommended, was a book called Surrounded by Narcissists, which looks at, narcissistic personality disorder, but also like the growing trend of narcissism in our country. And I do see that certain kinds of doting, one of the contentions is certain kinds of doting parenting styles can sort of promote this sort of narcissistic tendency, which is something.
Is that one of the arguments inside of this book, Surrounded by Narcissists?
Yeah.
Dude, I talk about it all the time. Like I'm constantly seeing that. We notice a huge difference when spending time with families that have multiple kids versus spending time with other families that have a single kid. And the single kids they're hovered over more. They're led to believe that their preferences are much more meaningful than kids who grow up in a house with 2 kids or 3 kids or 4 kids. I feel like the best regulated, most reasonable people we run into are these people who grew up in houses with 4 kids because, the families with 4 kids, because those are kids who don't run around having tantrums because they know it doesn't work. I was one of 4. My wife was one of 4, but I swear to God, like,
Alfred's one of 4.
Alfred's one of 4, right? I mean, these are people a tantrum's not going to work, because if it did, your 3 siblings would do it too. And then all of a sudden, as soon as everyone's tantruming, nobody can get their way because you can't satisfy 4 tantrums. It's just a self-defeating thing. Whereas these kids that are growing up in single kid households, not only is it depopulating the planet and tanking our economy, but I'm so glad I'm more interested in reading the book now that you tied it to parenting, because it seems to be a trend that I'm seeing a lot of.
I cannot wait to go over this book.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it from cover to. It's not perfect. It's not perfect science, but it is thought-provoking, and I think there's a lot of truth in it, and I really look forward to doing this one with you.
Okay, good. I will. I'll get it today, and I'll start reading it today. I can get on that right away. I'm excited about that, and I can get my wife on it too, because that's a topic we can get behind. And I think even as we're seeking to raise well-adjusted, thoughtful, caring children, I think there's still we're constantly humbled by how wrong we are at times. And I hope that we can find the right balance between consistency and that security that our parents have modeled for us, but also a dynamicism, a willingness to learn and to say that we're wrong, and to say that, like, no, hey, like the way that we've been doing it for the last 3 years, we're going to do it a little differently, like going forward.
Exactly. I always tell a patient, I always say, if you're the same person at 40 as you were at 25, you fucked up a long time ago. Like you need this sort of ability to be mentally flexible. I talk about that in one of my videos about, preventing dementia, this ability to be willing to take in new ideas, even if you don't like the way they're delivered. I hated the way it was delivered, but
you read through 400 pages of it. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I'm implementing the things that I find to be true and with good effect. So bottom line, maybe a little painful to read, do the audiobook if you need to, but I think it's thought-provoking enough to warrant a listen, especially if you got kids. But I think even for adults, we could benefit from some of these strategies.
Yeah. And newsflash, screen time might be bad. Okay. Dr. Dave, I think that's possibly a good place to leave it. I love your summary at the end there. And I look forward to more of these book club style episodes, because I think this is I want to just echo your review of that time in our lives when we were spending a lot more time reading. I remember being much happier. I remember growing a lot more as a person, and it's definitely something I want to get back into. And I did this over the Christmas break quite a bit. I turned my screen off, right? I like put my phone on Do Not Disturb a lot more and focused on slower tasks that required more focus. And I think it really benefited me tremendously. So it's something I look forward to getting back into.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to be back in it, and I'm glad to be doing this again.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you soon. Thank you very much for your time. Bye for now.
Take care, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the After Hours Clinic podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you love the show, leave us a review. You can sign up for our newsletter at joinbetterlife.com. And feel free to send in your hot takes and medical questions to podcast@joinbetterlife.com. Disclaimer: this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice or establish a doctor-patient relationship. Content should not replace professional medical consultation. Always consult your healthcare provider for medical conditions. Do not disregard or delay seeking professional advice based on podcast content.